It's not that they underestimate you, but I think one thing that I find galling as I get older is the sort of condescension.
I was sitting at home not long ago when someone asked me a question I'd never really stopped to think about. They said, "Helen, after all these years, who are the 5 people you've loved the most?" Not the greatest actors, not the biggest stars, just the people I loved. I smiled because that's a much harder question to answer. The greatest actors? Everyone has a different opinion, but the people who leave a place in your heart, that's something only you can know. I've been incredibly fortunate. My career has allowed me to spend decades surrounded by remarkable people. Some became legends. Some already were legends when I met them. Yet when I look back now, I don't think first about awards, premieres, or famous films. I remember the quiet moments, the conversations over tea while everyone waited for the cameras, the laughter between takes, the kindness people showed when nobody was watching. As I've grown older, I've realized something rather important. A career isn't really built from films. It's built from people. The people who made difficult days feel lighter. The people who made you smile the moment they walked onto the set. The people who quietly became part of your life without either of you ever planning it. So when I was asked that question, 5 names came to me almost immediately. The first was Alan Rickman. People often speak about Alan's extraordinary voice, and rightly so. The moment he began speaking, everyone listened. But that isn't what I remember most. What I remember is his kindness. Every single morning, he'd walk onto the set and say good morning to everyone. Not just the actors, but the makeup artists, the lighting crew, the runners, and the people carrying heavy cables that audiences never even notice. It sounds like such a small thing, but after spending a lifetime on film sets, I've learned that it's the small things people remember. I certainly do. The second person who immediately came to mind was Michael Gambon. If Alan brought a sense of calm wherever he went, Michael brought something entirely different. He brought life. You usually heard Michael before you saw him. There would be laughter somewhere across the studio, someone telling a story, and before long half the crew had gathered around him. He had a wonderful gift for lifting everyone's spirits without even trying. People often imagine film sets as glamorous places, but the truth is, there's an extraordinary amount of waiting. You wait while lights are adjusted, cameras are moved, or the weather decides whether you're filming at all. Michael understood those moments better than anyone. I remember one particularly long afternoon when everyone had become rather quiet. We'd been standing around for ages waiting for the next setup, and you could almost feel the frustration building. Then Michael looked around with that familiar grin and said, "Well, at least we're being paid to stand here." It wasn't a remarkable joke, but somehow it was exactly what everyone needed. The entire crew burst into laughter, and within seconds the mood had completely changed. What always amazed me was how quickly he could switch. One moment he was making everyone laugh, and the next the cameras were rolling and he was completely inside the character. That effortless professionalism is something I always admired. Even now, when I hear Michael's name, I don't first think of one particular performance. I hear his laugh. And somehow that's the memory that means the most to me. The third person is Christopher Plummer. I admired Christopher long before I ever truly knew him. Like so many actors, I spent years watching his work before one day finding myself sitting beside him between scenes. People often describe him as elegant, and they aren't wrong. But after spending time with him, what impressed me most wasn't his elegance. It was his curiosity. Christopher had an extraordinary ability to make you feel as though whatever you were saying genuinely mattered. One afternoon, while we were waiting for a camera to be moved, he simply asked me, "Helen, what have you been reading lately?" Before I knew it, we'd spent nearly half an hour talking about books. Not films, not awards, not careers, just books. If I'm honest, I can hardly remember what either of us said, but I remember exactly how I felt. Isn't that funny? As you grow older, the details fade away. The feeling never does. Christopher never behaved like someone who had already experienced everything life had to offer. He remained endlessly curious about people, ideas, and the world around him. I've often thought that's one of the real secrets to growing older gracefully. Never stop being interested. Christopher never did. The fourth name on my list is Bob Hoskins. Bob had one of those rare personalities that made you feel comfortable almost immediately. Within minutes of meeting him, it felt as though you'd known him for years. One morning, before filming, we were all having breakfast at the hotel. Most actors naturally sat together. Bob didn't. He picked up his tray, walked over, and sat beside one of the electricians instead. The two of them spent breakfast chatting away as though they'd been lifelong friends. I remember watching that and smiling. That was Bob. He never cared whether someone was famous or important. He cared whether they were kind. He would ask how you were, and then actually wait to hear the answer. It's surprising how rare that is. He had this wonderful habit of telling stories, laughing halfway through them, forgetting where he'd got to, then starting all over again. Sometimes the story itself wasn't even funny. Watching Bob tell it was. Whenever he arrived on set, somehow the entire day felt easier. Looking back now, I don't remember every conversation we shared, but I remember exactly how he made people feel. Sometimes that's the greatest gift a person can leave behind. And finally, there was Peter O'Toole. If I'm being truthful, Peter was probably the easiest name on this list. The moment I was asked the question, his face appeared immediately. People remember Peter as one of the greatest actors who ever lived. I remember the man sitting beside me after work, long after everyone else had gone home, telling stories that somehow became 3 different stories before they finally reached the ending. Whether every detail was true hardly mattered. Peter loved conversation. He loved making people laugh. He loved seeing where a story might take him. I once asked him if he ever became tired of acting. He looked at me for a moment, smiled, and simply said, "The waiting, sometimes, never the acting." I've never forgotten those words, because I understood exactly what he meant. There is a great deal of waiting in this profession, but if you still love the work after all those years, you've been incredibly lucky. I believe Peter knew that, and I know I did too. When people watch his films today, they'll see a legend. When I think of Peter, I see my friend, someone who could make an ordinary evening disappear without either of us noticing the time. As I look back over my life now, I realize something rather simple. I don't think about awards. I don't think about famous scenes. I don't even think about the characters we played. I remember hearing someone say, "Morning, Helen." I remember laughing between takes. I remember conversations that lasted far longer than anyone intended. Those are the moments that stayed with me. Careers eventually become history. Films become classics. But the people who stood beside you while the cameras weren't rolling, they're the memories that never fade. If I could ask for one more afternoon on a film set, I wouldn't ask for a bigger role or another award. I'd simply hope to look across the room and see Alan, Michael, Christopher, Bob and Peter waiting there once again. And I think that would be more than enough.